Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to talk about something that has mixed reviews, I guess you could say, but is something that I definitely think is worth your time to teach during your phonics block, and that is nonsense words. Now in this video I'm going to go over a little bit about what nonsense words are and some reasons why you should really incorporate them into your students' learning when you are teaching phonics skills, and I'm going to share 3 easy to implement activities that you can use with nonsense words. If you've watched my videos before, then welcome back, and if you are new here, my name is Susan Jones. I'm a former first grade and K-2 literacy teacher who now spends a lot of time here on YouTube making teaching tip videos for K-2 teachers just like you. I make all sorts of K-2 videos, but this video in particular is going to go into this playlist right here. This is my phonics and phonemic awareness playlist where I have a ton of videos teaching all sorts of activities and ideas about tons of different phonics skills. So after this video, if you want to check out those, that's the playlist to go to. All right, if you are ready to dive into this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. Now first, the big question is, do I need to teach nonsense words to my students? And the answer is a little trickier than you might think. In the teaching world, there's a lot of back and forth about nonsense word fluency and why is it necessary, does it confuse students, so on and so forth. But most of the researchers I follow and highly respect really state that using nonsense words can help you as the teacher identify strengths and weaknesses in students' phonics awareness. If students are able to decode or encode nonsense words, then we can get a little insight onto what phonics patterns they're fluent with and what ones they still need to work on. So the biggest tip for nonsense word fluency is you are not going to want to teach this for acquisition, meaning you don't need students to drill nonsense words so that they can read nonsense words, because they don't. With a little asterisk there, I'll explain later. But instead, we want to kind of sprinkle it into our phonics instruction so we can have a quick assessment on how well students are understanding these patterns. Now, 2 quick things to note before I go into the 3 activities I wanted to share, but number 1 is students don't need to be proficient in decoding nonsense words to be a skilled reader. So again, that kind of goes back to the assessment versus acquisition. We don't need students to be able to decode a bunch of nonsense or alien words, but we do like to throw it into our instruction to see where students might need a little more help. And tip number 2 goes back to that asterisk I just mentioned about students not needing to read a bunch of nonsense words because they're not going to come across it in their reading. But the asterisk is there because when students are actually reading multisyllabic words, they will be reading nonsense words. What I mean by this is, think about the word telephone. When students break this word into syllables, telephone, they are going to have to read T-E-L, tell. Now that is not a word on its own. That is a nonsense word. The word tell is a real word, but it has the double L. Anyway, this T-E-L would be a CVC nonsense word that your students may be familiar with if you kind of toss that into your instruction. So many argue that teaching students nonsense words also teaches them different syllables. It helps them break up those longer words, so the more proficient they are in decoding nonsense words, the better they will become at reading multisyllabic words. So to make a long story short, teaching nonsense words is not something you will need to do all the time. You should still spend most of your phonics instruction time focusing on some phonemic awareness, matching that sound to the grapheme, building words, all the things I mentioned in all my other phonics videos. But in most of those, I will always also add in a nonsense word lesson where students are getting a little bit of practice practicing that skill with fake words. So now let me show you 3 concrete ways to do just that. The first activity is going to be some explicit blending of these sounds. Now again, I wouldn't do a whole lesson on blending nonsense words like explicitly and they're only nonsense, but instead what I would do is I would sprinkle some nonsense words into our blending practice of real words. So for example, if we are working on the silent E skill and I'm up on the board and I'm having my students blend words like lime or time, I might go ahead and throw in an H on there and I would say, okay, what about this one? heim, and just throw it in there. Now, I would make it clear to students that, wait a second, that is a nonsense word, it's not real, just so they aren't like, what's that word? I've never heard it before, and there's no confusion there. But instead, I can show them that following the English language, we can still read this alien and nonsense word, and it's kind of fun. You can definitely write it on the board and walk students through this process, but I also have some new blending slides that I love, and let me just show you what they look like. So here are the blending slides I was talking about. Now, when you open this up, this is in Google Slides, as you can see, and there are a ton of different words. There are 160 slides here total. And with the blending slides, students will have to blend each sound and then put the word together. And this one you can see are the silent E, or I think actually these are specifically CVCE words in this one. And it has a space theme. Depending on the skill, like CVC words, digraphs, blends, they all have different themes with something different that blends across the screen. So let me just show you how this would work. You would just go, this is all, you don't even have to touch any of this. You would just go right to slideshow, and it will come up nice and big on your screen. And students would have to look at where the little rocket ship is, or the UFO, and they would make that sound. So this one would say S, I, Z, size, and you can see how it blends it underneath. I, p, ripe. I, g, fied. So there you can see a nonsense word thrown in. Sime. Same. So there you can kind of see what it looks like. And for these, you can really just throw them up on the screen and maybe for like 5 minutes or so, have students practice blending these sounds. This is just a fun warm-up for your students to practice blending sounds that they already know, so it's a good review for them. And with the little spaceship or, underwater themes that they have, it just makes it a little more fun for them. I did a bunch of those with my own kids and they loved them. So if you're interested in those, they are in the SJT Literacy Club, which I will link down below, but they are also on TPT. So I will put that link down in the description in case you want to check them out. Activity number 2 for incorporating nonsense words into your phonics instruction is to have students encode nonsense words. Now, I have a whole video on encoding tips for getting students to write down the words that they know using their phonics pattern knowledge. But I just watched a little YouTube video of Louisa Moats, and she was sharing about how she likes to have students actually encode nonsense words or write them down, because that also shows another level of understanding, and it's another good informal assessment to see what your student knows. We already know so much goes into encoding. Students have to be able to match the sounds to the graphemes and then write them in the right order. So having them encode these nonsense words is another great way to see what they are proficient in and what they might need to work on. Now, in the past, I think I have solely focused on having them decode nonsense words, so having them write them down is definitely another little sprinkle you can add into your phonics instruction. Now, similar to when you were having students do those blending slides, you don't want them to, spend an entire time writing down a bunch of fake words. Instead, you would have them encode maybe 3 or 4 real words and then let them know, I'm gonna throw in an alien word, a nonsense word. Let's see if you can actually write this down. Let's talk about it. It's a good way to kind of analyze those phonics patterns and talk about why it may be spelled that way. And by telling them that it is a nonsense word up front, it lessens that confusion. And last but not least, phonics activity number 3 for using nonsense words is to sprinkle it into your game time. Now, I am a huge proponent of using simple and easy to play games to get students really practicing all sorts of phonics skills. If you've watched any of my videos, especially these phonics ones on this playlist before, then I have shared well over like 50 different quick phonics games that are effective for getting students to decode, encode, read words in sentences, all sorts of things. So as you're playing these phonics games, it can be effective to sprinkle in some nonsense word fluency as well. Some examples I have for this include this sheet right here. This is a real or nonsense CVC game that I have, and this is included in my print and play phonics unit, where for each of the skills I'm teaching students, I have about 6 different unique games that students can play. Some of them focus on phonemic awareness, other ones focus on decoding, encoding, etc. But for the 6 games that I have for each different skill, like this one is CVC words, usually one of them will have some nonsense word practice. So again, it's not super prevalent, but it is sprinkled in there for students to practice. In this game, students will go back and forth spinning the 2 spinners. Here you see one with the medial vowel E. I have one for each of the vowels, and they will simply need to blend that beginning, middle, and ending sound, say it aloud, and try to determine, is this real or is this nonsense? Here's another example of a nonsense word game, but instead of CVC, this is from my silent E unit. And again, it is the real or nonsense game, but here students are actually going to spin that beginning sound, the onset, and they will spin the rhyme over on the other side. This one focuses on A, but again, I have these for each vowel. They will have to blend it and determine, is this a real or is this a nonsense word? And then for both this game and that CVC one, the student who fills up their real grid first is the winner. And just as one more different example, here is Race to Read. This is a game in my blends unit. So in the blends print and play games, again, there are 6 unique games. And here is just a simple, fluency decoding practice where students have to roll the dice and then read the next word in the column. And the first person to reach the top is the winner. But with this game, I created a real board, there is a nonsense board, and this one that I'm showing right here is mixed. So students will have some real words mixed in with some nonsense words to practice. I have a ton of others for like vowel teams, diphthongs, all sorts of different phonics skills, but those are just 3 examples of how you can kind of take a regular phonics game where students are practicing all sorts of important skills and sprinkle in a little nonsense word fluency as well. So there you have 3 easy ways you can incorporate nonsense words into your phonics instruction. You can have them practice blending nonsense words, you can have them practice encoding nonsense words, and don't forget to sprinkle a little bit of that into your games. Now, I would love to know from you, do you teach nonsense words in your classroom? If you do you have any fun activities or ideas for doing so? Let us know down in the comments below. As always, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.